Hello and welcome to a Blaxplanation of the seasonal readings. In season 11, the election was a little different to usual. Every team had been given total fairness by the boss, meaning they could only win one blessing each. The blessings were unusual too, as they were not buffs or changes for teams. Instead, they were arcana, one card for each team. Then, when 4 teams joined the ILB in Season 12 during the dissension, they were all assigned Fool, as they had not been present for the vote. Since then, in every Earlsiesta, there has been a seasonal reading, where 3 cards are selected. Fans have also been able to buy Tarot Spread, giving them cards ahead of the draw, which they can shuffle or buy a new spread. This is claimed to have an impact on the draw itself, but in what way, nobody is quite sure. It began in Season 12 with the Magician, the Hanged Man, Temperance. As a result of this draw, 2 players from the first and last team gained modifications. Seemingly, the card in the middle, the Hanged Man, had affected what the modifications would do, making the best player on the Magic worse and the worst player on the Firefighters better. Over-under means if the team scores 5 runs or more, Curry Alicia Keys will underperform for the rest of the game. Under-over means that when the team has less than 5 runs, Kennedy Rogers will overperform. These are both permanent modifications. Season 13 gave us the High Priestess, the Devil, and Judgment. This gave the Fridays a permanent modification in Sinking Ship, and the Lovers a seasonal modification of base dealing. Sinking Ship affects the Friday's performance based on how many players there are on the team. 14 players is unaffected. Then for every player fewer, they perform 1% better, and for every player more, they perform 1% worse. Base dealing simply means that the Lovers lineup will play in reverse order for that season. The Fridays made the postseason with 13 players. The Lovers did not. Season 14 was Strength, Fool, and the Empress. The icon accompanying Fool changed a lot before finally settling on the crabs. This draw gave 1 player each on the Flowers and the Lift the Receiver modification. This appeared a little defunct, as receivers had not been relevant or active since Season 9. However, in the late season, when Psychoacoustics was built and Wyatt Masons returned, this had an impact, eventually leading to the becoming static of Wyatt Quitter. Season 15's draw opened with a title, Materia, followed by the Hierophant, 13, and the Empress, making its second appearance. The Breath Mints, or from their arcana, the Death Mints, gained the seasonal mod Middling. This means they would overperform in the mid-season, whilst the Flowers gained After Party, allowing them a week of party time boosts outside of party time, but only when they were losing. The Mints made the postseason. The Flowers came second last in their division. Season 16 was titled Materia, and consisted of the Tower, the Magician, and the Hierophant for a second time. The effects of this draw were slightly different, as rather than gaining modifications, this season players lost them. Collins Mellon of the Jazz Hands was no longer an alternate, whilst James Moorer of the Magic lost Super Yummy and its associated benefits. Season 17 opened as Materia, with the Tower for the second time, the Hierophant for the third time, and the Emperor making its first appearance. It was then followed by Materia. Another change to the normal, as rather than modifications, this time the reading gave out items. Baby Doyle gained a necklace, which imparted the modifications Uncertain and Entangled. Uncertain would adjust their stats if they returned from elsewhere, but Entangled means their alternate would return from elsewhere instead. Materia. Meanwhile, Orville Manco linked to the Materia title, gained a force field of observation. This means they cannot move or leave the team's roster, but they are also observed. Season 18 was Temperance, the Chariot, and Justice. But then things got interesting, as the reader of the seasonal draws followed the cards with two messages. Out from under, take the over. At this point, the boss immediately appeared, interrupting the usual flow of the Earlsiesta. Unimpressed by this season's draw, they announced that the seasonal readings would be suspended indefinitely. The reader had just one retort. But despite being suspended, the reading of this season still happened, and it made one player from the firefighters and one from the garages negative. But the reader had more tricks up their sleeve, adding to the election ballot a decree, 4 blessings, and co-opting one of the wills. The decree passed as one of 3, adding turntables to every ballpark in the ILB. This meant that any win would become an unwin. 10 teams chose to alternate a player, all of whom arrived with the negative modification, and the blessings were eagerly received by 4 different teams. When the season 19 Earlsiesta begins, we are greeted by the boss, reiterating that the seasonal readings are cancelled and urging fans to reverse their choice from the election. Being cancelled doesn't seem to prevent the reader, though, as they appear and call on fans to underachieve and overwhelm. The reader has also done a draw that involves every team in the ILB. From each trio, one team receives an undertaker, who will develop a negative if the teammate is swept elsewhere. One team an uncertain player, who will have their stats adjusted if they are swept elsewhere and return, and one team a seeker, who can bring teammates back from elsewhere. The reader also added to the election this season, with another decree, 4 new blessings, and a continued adaptation to alternate trust. In a 1v1 competition with the boss, the reader's decree won with 73% of the vote, the highest of any decree in Blaseball history. This granted the league the underbracket, a chance for the lowest ranking teams to compete in their own postseason. 5 teams chose alternate, with the Moist Talkers and Firefighters choosing it for a second time. This still granted negative as the modification. Whilst the Moist Talkers won another blessing, 3 new teams won the remaining. And now we wait to see what season 20 brings us. Who will win the underbracket? Is the seasonal reading really cancelled? And who are you backing in this showdown? Thank you for joining me for another Blaxplanation. I'll be back with more Blaseball fun and facts soon, but until then, rejoice, play ball.